Hello and welcome viewers. You're watching our brand new show In Depth with your host Kriti Mishra, a platform where we break the most complex issues of the world in just 5 simple questions and their 5 simple answers and help you understand how these issues matter to you. As war between Russia and Ukraine unfolds, today let's analyze the relationship between war and sale of arms. So do arms sales cause war or do wars cause arms sales? Critics of arms sales often argue that selling weapons abroad fuels conflict, citing examples of Syria, Yemen and Iraq. On the other hand, skeptics argue that weapons don't start the fire and the conflicts would arise whether or not arms exporters sell weapons. The proliferation of arms is a major issue in the debate on conflict preservation and resolution. In some cases, arms are produced by the actors involved in conflicts. But in many other cases, such actors are dependent on foreign supplies for many or all of their arms acquisitions. So where is the arms conflict happening right now in the world? In 2016, more countries experienced violent conflict than at any point in almost 30 years. Conflict remains the primary driver of terrorism, with more than 99% of all terrorist-related deaths occurring in countries involved in a violent conflict or with high levels of political terror. The majority of deadly attacks take place in the Middle East, North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, with Afghanistan, Iraq, Nigeria, Somalia and Syria bearing the heaviest brunt. Has the arms industry changed over the years? Oh yes. And how? The arms industry underwent a profound restructuring after the Cold War. In the first half of the 1990s, it experienced a significant cut in orders, both domestically and from foreign governments. But today, conflict and violence are currently on the rise, with many conflicts waged between non-state actors such as political militias, criminal and international terrorist groups. Cut to 2020, when we face lockdowns, crumbling supply chains, dead economic activity. The COVID-19 pandemic brought about massive economic slumps around the world. But one sector proved immune to the virus, and no points for guessing: the arms industry. Even though the IMF put global economic contraction at 3.1%, we saw that the arms sales of the top 100 companies increased nonetheless, an overall increase of 1.3% during the pandemic. For several decades, the trade in weapons has been among the most lucrative businesses in the world, with predictable increases year after year. So which all countries dominate the arms production arena? Let's analyze these numbers meticulously. The United States had a market share of 37% in international arms exports between 2016 and 2020. The second largest supplier of major weapons worldwide was Russia, accounting for 20% of exports over the same period. The US and Russia contributed over half of major weapons exports between 2016 and 2020. Following the former Cold War superpowers, France, Germany and China were the leading global suppliers. Since 2018, the top 5 companies in the ranking have all been based in the USA. American arms customers included 96 different states during this time period, with 47% of those sales. But where are these arms going and why? Let's analyze again. The largest importer of major arms between 2016 and 2020, Saudi Arabia, accounted for 11% of the global market. The kingdom's imports increased 130% compared to the previous 5-year period. Armored vehicles, trainer aircraft, missiles and guided bombs were among the leading arms purchased by the kingdom. And where does India stand in all this? Arms imports to India, which used to be world's largest importer, decreased by 33%, and India was world's second largest arms importer during the period 2016-2020. Russia has been the worst hit by India's decreased share, although it still ranks as the subcontinent's largest arms suppliers, delivering 49% of its total imports. Interestingly, defense transfers from the US to India declined by 46% as well. India's goal is to cut its dependence on other countries for defense systems across the board, rather than to pivot from one supplier to the other. This underlines New Delhi's resolve to promote indigenous defense manufacturing and export, with the target of increasing the sector's turnover to $25 billion by 2025. But do you realize, every day, millions of people suffer from the direct and indirect consequences of irresponsible arms trade? So what's the connection between the arms trade and poverty? The poorly regulated arms trade impedes socio-economic development. It is estimated that armed violence costs Africa $18 billion per year. This is approximately equivalent to the annual sums of development aid to the entire continent. Armed conflict shrinks an African nation's economy by 15%. So how is the arms trade regulated internationally? Virtually all areas of world trade, from banana to petroleum, timber to minerals, are covered by regulations that bind countries into agreed conduct. Before the adoption of the Arms Trade Treaty in April 2013 by the General Assembly of the United Nations, there was no global set of rules governing the trade in conventional weapons. The treaty sets robust international standards to help guide governments in deciding whether or not to authorize arms transfers. It provides for cooperation and assistance to help countries develop adequate regulatory systems and safe weapons stockpiles. The adoption of the Arms Trade Treaty marked a turning point in the international community's efforts to regulate the global trade in conventional arms and to promote peace and security. The economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic could see some countries reassessing their arms imports in the coming years. However, at the same time, even at the height of the pandemic in 2020, several countries signed large contracts for major arms. This pivot towards regional competition for major arms, in contrast with the constant global friction of the later 20th century, could reshape power politics in the coming decades. I leave you with those thought-provoking questions and answers, and let me sign off by this quote of Winston Churchill. War does not determine who is right, it only determines who is left. Goodbye for now.